Hello everyone, and welcome to my Young and the Restless official 24 channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Jack Abbott had survived corporate takeovers, kidnappings, heart-splintering betrayals, and the endless war that was life in Genoa City, but nothing, absolutely nothing, prepared him for the avalanche of treachery that crashed down on him the moment the truth about Diane and Victor detonated in his face like a grenade. It started with whispers, the kind Jack always dismissed as background noise in a town addicted to chaos, but when Michael Baldwin pressed that envelope into his hand with a look that resembled pity, Jack felt the earth begin to tilt beneath him. Inside were photographs, timestamps, recordings, proof that the woman he fought for, defended against the entire city, resurrected his family for, had been living a dangerous double life. Diane Jenkins, the woman he almost lost his soul protecting, had been funneling information straight to Victor Newman. Not once, not twice, but for months. The secret alliance between them was deeper, darker, more calculated than anything Jack could have imagined. And the reason? The thing that made Jack's stomach drop to ice? Diane hadn't just been passing corporate intel, she had been reporting on Jack himself. His vulnerabilities. His moves. His weaknesses. She was the traitor. His traitor. And as photos of clandestine meetings between Diane and Victor spilled from the envelope like poison, something inside Jack, the last gentle piece of him, cracked. His hands shook so violently he had to steady himself against the desk, breath ragged, flashing back to every moment Diane had begged for trust. Every vow she'd made about loyalty. Every night she curled against him saying she'd changed. He wanted to scream. He wanted to burn the world down. But before he could even begin to process the betrayal that gutted him, a more horrifying scream echoed across the Abbott estate, Claire's scream. It wasn't the kind that belonged to fear alone. It was the kind soaked in tragedy, soaked in blood. Jack sprinted toward the sound, instincts overriding heartbreak, until he reached the clearing behind the estate, and saw a nightmare he would never erase. Kyle was on the ground, gasping, blood blooming across his shirt like a red tidal wave. Claire was beside him, trembling, hands covered in his blood, her voice hoarse as she screamed his name. And several feet away, holding the knife he'd just plunged into Kyle's chest, stood Holden, face twisted, eyes wild, darkness unleashed in its purest, most unrecognizable form. Holden wasn't running. He wasn't panicking. He was smiling. A slow, disturbing smile that sent chills ripping through Jack's spine. "He shouldn't have gotten in my way," Holden muttered, voice eerily calm, as though he hadn't just committed a murder in broad daylight. Claire kept pleading, sobbing, "Kyle, stay with me, please, stay with me," as she pressed her hands into his wound. Kyle touched her arm weakly, eyes glassy, breath fading. The world narrowed around Jack. Every betrayal, every heartbreak, every fight he'd ever endured evaporated under the horror of watching his son bleed out on the cold ground. He dropped to his knees, voice cracking, "Kyle. Oh my God, Kyle." But Kyle wasn't looking at Jack. He was staring into Claire's eyes, clinging to the last thread of life long enough to whisper his final 5 words, the last words he would ever speak. Holden was working with Diane. Claire froze. Jack froze. The trees, the sky, the world, everything froze. Holden's smile widened into something monstrous. And in that moment, Jack understood. This wasn't just a random act of violence. This was orchestrated. Calculated. A scheme so twisted it fused Diane's betrayal with Holden's brutality in a way that felt apocalyptic. Diane hadn't just been feeding Victor corporate intel, she'd been feeding Holden information too. Holden wasn't some unhinged drifter. He was the weapon. Diane had unknowingly, or worse, knowingly, set the stage for the ultimate Abbott destruction. Holden stepped closer, knife dripping, voice dropping to a sinister whisper. "Your family was always too strong, Jack. Someone had to break it." Jack lunged forward, fury consuming every cell in his body, but Holden took off into the woods like a phantom. Claire collapsed over Kyle's lifeless body, trembling uncontrollably, whispering apologies through sobs as Jack held Kyle's hand, begging, "Please, please don't go, son," but there was no breath left in him. Kyle, the baby Jack once held in his arms, the man he watched grow, the heart of the Abbott family, was gone. Jack's scream tore from his chest like a wounded animal. It wasn't just grief, it was rage, betrayal, devastation, and something far more dangerous, the promise of vengeance. When the paramedics arrived, when the police swarmed the grounds, when Claire was pulled away shaking and covered in Kyle's blood, Jack stood there with a hollow expression that made even Chancellor step back. It was the look of a man who had snapped. And then, as if the universe wanted to twist the dagger deeper, Diane appeared at the edge of the clearing, face pale, eyes wide with horror as she whispered, "Jack, what happened?" Jack turned toward her slowly, the envelope with her betrayal still crushed in his fist. Diane saw the blood on his hands. She saw Kyle's body. And then she saw the truth in Jack's eyes. He knew. He knew everything. She opened her mouth to speak, but Jack cut her off with a voice so cold it could shatter stone. "You lied to me. You lied about everything. You fed Victor information, you fed Holden information. You helped unleash the monster that murdered my son." Diane's knees buckled. "Jack, no, I didn't, I swear I didn't." But Jack wasn't hearing excuses. He didn't want explanations. His world was burning. "Every person who betrayed this family," he said slowly, dangerously, "will answer for it." Diane reached for him, tears streaking her face. "Jack, please, I didn't know." Jack stepped back as if her touch was acid. "Don't." Diane's breath hitched as the reality hit her. Jack Abbott wasn't just heartbroken. He wasn't just grieving. He was transforming into something else. Something darker. Something forged in loss and betrayal. And the worst part was, she had helped create it. As officers questioned Claire, as Holden vanished into the night like a shadow made of pure evil, as Victor Newman arrived on scene with that unreadable expression only he could master, Jack's rage deepened into a vow, a silent, violent promise that he would uncover every layer of this conspiracy. Every lie Diane told. Every alliance Victor forged. Every step Holden took. And when the truth surfaced, when the final piece clicked into place, Jack would bring hell to every single person responsible for Kyle's death. Diane watched him walk away from her, watched the man she loved turn into someone she no longer recognized, someone broken beyond repair. And she knew with chilling certainty that the ripple effects of her secret were only beginning. Holden's dark side was exposed. Kyle's last words revealed the evil truth. And Jack Abbott? He was about to become the most dangerous force Genoa City had ever seen. The aftermath of Kyle's murder hung over Genoa City like a storm cloud that refused to break. The Abbott estate, once a sanctuary of wealth, influence, and family pride, now reeked of betrayal, blood, and fear. Jack paced the length of the drawing room, the echo of his footsteps loud in the hollow space, each step a drumbeat of fury and anguish. Diane had been brought to a temporary state of shock, handcuffed in a corner, trembling, her eyes darting between Jack, the paramedics, and the police as though the world itself had betrayed her. But Jack barely saw her. His mind was consumed by one thing, revenge, justice, and the horrifying knowledge that the people he had trusted most had been orchestrating a nightmare that left his son dead and his family in ruins. Outside, the wind howled, rattling the windows, as if the universe itself mourned Kyle. Jack's eyes narrowed, his jaw clenched. He had faced villains before. He had fought through kidnappings, hostile takeovers, and murders, but this was personal in a way that cut deeper than any physical wound. Diane, his Diane, the woman whose charm, intelligence, and beauty had once softened the world for him, had double-crossed him, feeding information to both Victor and Holden. And Holden. Jack couldn't even begin to describe the horror of Holden's betrayal. He had known Holden was dangerous, yes, but not like this. Not a murderer in cold blood, not capable of taking a life with calculated precision and walking away with that twisted sense of satisfaction. Jack's mind raced, and the memories of Kyle, the boy he had held, nurtured, and loved like a piece of his own soul, flashed before his eyes. The image of Kyle's blood-streaked face, the pleading in his eyes, the weak whisper of his final 5 words, Holden was working with Diane, burned itself into Jack's memory. He could still hear Claire's screams, still feel the shaking of her hands as she tried to keep Kyle alive. That sound would haunt him forever. As Jack sank into a chair, exhausted yet vibrating with rage, Victor Newman entered the room. The air shifted immediately. Victor's presence was like a weight pressing down on everyone in the room. Diane flinched, while Jack's eyes darted toward Victor, their mutual animosity simmering beneath the surface. Victor's face was a mask of unreadable calculation, no shock, no visible emotion. It was as if he had expected this all along. Jack, Victor said smoothly, voice carrying the calm of a man who thrived in chaos. I heard about Kyle, tragic. I truly am sympathetic. His words were hollow, yet delivered with precision, a reminder of why Victor Newman had survived every storm in Genoa City. Jack's eyes narrowed, fists tightening. Sympathetic, Victor? Your sympathies don't bring my son back. Your schemes don't erase the blood on my hands, or Diane's lies, or Holden's murders. You've poisoned everything. Victor tilted his head, gaze sharp. Now, Jack, let's not forget why Diane made those choices. She's been playing a dangerous game, yes, but don't pretend you were completely innocent. You've made enemies too. And Holden, well, that boy's a wild card. I warned you about trusting him. Jack's blood boiled. Every syllable Victor uttered was a provocation, a reminder of how intertwined their lives had become in a web of manipulation, betrayal, and murder. He rose abruptly, chair scraping loudly against the hardwood floor. Don't you dare use my son's death as a weapon, Victor. I am not negotiating. I am not scheming. I am going to hunt down Holden, and I am going to make sure Diane pays for every lie, every betrayal, and every death she helped facilitate. Victor's lips curled into a faint, knowing smile. Jack, careful what you promise. When rage consumes you, you risk losing more than just the people you love. Jack ignored him. Rage had transformed into a singular purpose, vengeance. He knew he had to find Holden before the boy struck again, before any other lives were destroyed. He also knew Diane had to answer for her betrayal. But Jack was smarter than rage, he was strategic. He would play the long game. He would gather evidence, manipulate situations, and corner them both. The reckoning would be meticulous, brutal, and total. Meanwhile, across the city, Holden sat in the shadows of an abandoned warehouse, knife still slick with Kyle's blood, replaying the chaos he had orchestrated. A faint smirk touched his lips as he thought of Jack's grief-stricken face, of Claire's screams. The thrill of power, of control over the lives around him, surged through him like an intoxicating drug. But Holden wasn't done. No, he had plans. He would stay one step ahead, always lurking, always unpredictable. Every alliance he formed, every secret he uncovered, was another piece of his ultimate game. Diane's betrayal, or complicity, depending on the perspective, had been a convenient tool. A stepping stone. But Jack Abbott's wrath was something he had to consider carefully. Back at the Abbott mansion, Claire was inconsolable. She clung to Kyle's lifeless body, wailing, rocking back and forth. Jack knelt beside her, one hand gripping her shoulder, the other holding Kyle's cold hand. I'm so sorry, Claire, so sorry, he whispered. But he knew words meant nothing. Nothing could undo the horror, nothing could replace Kyle. And yet, in that raw, painful moment, a seed of resolve planted itself in Jack's heart. He would not allow Holden to terrorize another family, nor would Diane escape accountability. The following days became a blur of chaos. Police investigations, media scrutiny, and the whispers of Genoa City's elite crowded the Abbott estate. Jack moved through it all with the precision of a man possessed. He questioned witnesses, analyzed every piece of evidence, and worked closely with law enforcement, though he knew their resources were limited compared to the depths of deception he faced. Diane, meanwhile, oscillated between fear, defiance, and desperate pleas for forgiveness, though Jack barely acknowledged her words. To him, she had crossed an irredeemable line. One night, after hours of pacing and planning, Jack received a call from an informant, a key figure in Holden's past who had noticed unusual behavior and traced it to a warehouse near the docks. Without hesitation, Jack mobilized, driving through the dark streets with a cold, controlled fury. Every traffic light, every honking horn, faded into insignificance against the singular thought of confronting Holden. Claire insisted on coming, refusing to stay behind, her grief fueling a dangerous courage. Jack wanted to protest, to protect her, but he knew she wouldn't be denied. Together, they approached the warehouse, the night air thick with tension. Inside, Holden awaited, almost expecting them. He lounged casually, knife in hand, but with the calculated patience of a predator. "Jack," he greeted, voice smooth, almost mocking. "You've come for me." How predictable. Jack's response was immediate and lethal in tone. "Step away from the knife, Holden. This ends tonight." Holden's smirk widened. "Tonight? Oh, Jack, this is only the beginning. Diane taught me well, Victor guided me, and now you're trying to catch me? Pathetic." Claire, shaking but determined, stepped forward. "Leave him alone. You will not hurt anyone else." Her voice cracked, but there was steel beneath the tremor. Holden's eyes flicked to her, intrigued, then to Jack, calculating. "You think I'm afraid of her?" Jack shouted, stepping between Holden and Claire. "You've made a huge mistake. This ends with justice, not theatrics." Holden lunged suddenly, knife aimed at Jack. The movement was lightning fast, but Jack anticipated, catching his wrist and twisting, forcing Holden to drop the blade. A struggle ensued, Jack's training and raw strength pitted against Holden's desperate ferocity. Claire screamed, running to grab the knife and throw it across the room, leaving Holden momentarily defenseless. Jack pinned Holden against the wall, fury radiating like fire. "You took Kyle from us," he growled. "You think you can just walk away?" Holden's laughter was cold, manic, but faltered slightly under Jack's gaze. "Kyle, he was weak. He couldn't survive in this world. I'm stronger." Jack's grip tightened. "Stronger doesn't mean right. And you will answer for this." Police sirens wailed in the distance. Someone had alerted authorities. Holden's bravado flickered. Jack shoved him to the ground as officers swarmed in, securing Holden in handcuffs. Holden's eyes, once wild with confidence, now darted nervously. The game had shifted. As Holden was led away, Jack finally allowed himself a moment to breathe, exhaustion and grief crashing over him. Claire, tears streaming down her face, collapsed against him. "Kyle. I can't believe he's gone," she whispered. Jack held her tightly, his own tears threatening to break through the hardened armor he had built. "I know, Claire. I know. But we'll survive. We'll fight. And we'll make sure this never happens again." And though Diane still lingered in the background, handcuffed, her double life laid bare, Jack knew the reckoning was far from over. Victor Newman's machinations, Diane's betrayals, and Holden's darkness were threads of a tapestry that had only just begun to unravel. Jack Abbott was no longer the man who had trusted too easily. He was a man forged in grief, tempered in rage, and ready to reclaim his family's honor, no matter the cost. The city of Genoa would never be the same, and Jack Abbott, broken, enraged, and unstoppable, was ready to ensure that the ghosts of betrayal, murder, and deception would pay their dues, one way or another. The moment Holden was secured in handcuffs, a chilling silence fell over the warehouse. Claire clung to Jack as if the physical bond could somehow mend the gaping wound in their lives, the absence of Kyle a constant, throbbing ache. Jack's eyes, dark and burning with a mixture of grief and rage, never left Holden. The boy had taken more than a life, he had shattered an entire family. Jack's mind raced, plotting every step, every angle, every move he would take to ensure justice. But even as he thought of vengeance, he couldn't ignore the looming presence of Diane, the architect of so much of the chaos.